The Italian opening might be the first opening you learn as a beginner, but is much more than that. First of all, how do we reach the Italian opening? Well, we need to play e4, and after our opponent plays e5, we play the move knight on f3, attacking the pawn. Now, if our opponent, instead of playing d6, the Philidor, or knight on f6, the Russian defense, decide to play knight on c6, we can play the move bishop on c4, and now we are in the Italian opening, after the move bishop on c4. Bishop on b5 will be the Louis Lopez instead, which is played at the highest level because allows white to put long-term pressure on black position. The Italian game instead is known to be more tactical and more aggressive, and if black knows theory, it has an easier time against it, although none of us, I think, is a super grandmaster, and I think the Italian game is a really strong and good opening. You also need to know that it's not only aggressive, there are variations that are pretty solid and positional. So I think it's an opening that suits pretty much every player because it's plenty of variation for every style possible. First of all, that's an introductory video, so I'm going to talk about this opening in general and I'm going to show you some lines of the most played variations. First of all, what is the point of playing bishop on c4? Well, as you can see, we already developed two minor pieces and we are ready to castle, so we are going to castle short pretty soon. And we have ideas of attacking in the center with the move d4, or we can support the move d4 by playing c3, and we're going to play d4 in the future. That's a slower move, but gives white the higher chance to win. Also, the point of bishop on c4 is that we put pressure on the f7 pawn, so we have the idea in the future to play knight on g5 and attack this pawn. So in some lines, you are going to see this move. In this position, there are two moves that are played a lot. The main move is bishop on c5, and the other move is knight on f6. These moves are quite played, although in the next videos I'm going to talk not only about this variation, but also about two side lines that are quite played, at least at online level, but I think also at tournament level, that are bishop e7, the Hungarian defense, and d6, which you might think is the Philidor defense, but it is actually the Paris defense because black played the move knight on c6. So going back, let's talk about the main line, the most played move, which is bishop on c5. What is the point of bishop on c5? The point of bishop on c5 is basically copying white and try to play a symmetrical position. Black is not going to have any problems if, for example, we play knight on c3 and they're going to play knight on f6. The position is quite symmetrical and black is doing fine. Also white is doing fine, but we have better chance, I would say. Although in this position, the most played move, the by far most played move, is the move c3. And with c3, we can have a really aggressive approach or a solid and slow approach. Instead of playing this, we could also play the move knight on c3, which, as I said, allows black to equalize, but if you are a beginner, I actually would suggest this move, because, I mean, it's quite simple to play, there are not crazy tactics, it's not too complicated, we are developing a minor piece and life is good. At this point we could play, for example, d3, and after they play d6, I wouldn't suggest you to play the move bishop on g5, because if they play h6 we have zero problems, but they have the move knight on a5 attacking the bishop, which can lead to complication, and instead of doing that, I will just play this. Short castle, and after the castle short, we can play bishop on e3, or even better, we can play knight on a4 attacking the bishop. After they play bishop on b6, we can take, pawn take, we develop the bishop and life is good, we had zero problems. Obviously black had zero problems too, but we survived the opening and no one is losing. Going back, what happens if in this position, instead of playing knight on c3, we play, for example, d3? Well, d3 is the slow approach, I would say, and that's called the gioco pianissimo. After they play bishop on c5, it's the gioco piano. If we play d3, it's the gioco pianissimo. And it's called gioco pianissimo because after they play knight on f6, we usually play the move c3. They play d6 for example, and we castle, and as you can see, we are not going to break in the center. At least for now. Before doing that, we want to develop our pieces, to maneuver our pieces slowly, and then we can play the move d4. Let's say black plays a6, the most played move is a4, and after that they play bishop on a7, avoiding any idea of d4, winning a tempo on the bishop, and we can play, for example, rook on e1, short castle, h3, h6, knight bd2 with the idea of playing knight on f1 and knight on f3. It's a slow maneuvering game. If instead of playing d3, we play the move c3, we can dispose to the gioco pianissimo. After they play this, we can play d3. But instead of doing that, we have also some aggressive line. The move that I play in this position is the center attack with d4. After we play this, they pretty much have to take, you can't waste the time, otherwise you get absolutely demolished. So they have to take, and now we play e5, and that's called the Greco gambit. After that, d5. Bishop on b5, the knight has to move because it was under attack. We can take the pawn, they give us a check, and we can block with the knight or with the bishop. Let's say we block with the knight. It's the second most played move, but I still think is the better move. And at this point they can castle, we castle, bishop on g4, queen on e4, and as you can see, is a pretty complicated position. It's certainly not a positional opening. This is pretty tactical, and that's why I like this variation. But if you are a positional player, as I said, the Italian opening is for everyone. You can choose between positional stuff and aggressive and tactical stuff. Now, what happens if they don't play the move c5, the gioco piano, and instead of doing that, they play the move knight on f6? Knight on f6 is the 2-knight defense. First of all, keep in mind that we could play the move knight c3, but this time is going to be different, and white will be in a lot of trouble. The difference is that with knight f6, after we play knight on c3, there is actually the move knight takes on e4, and after that we obviously have to take the knight. And the point is that yes, black lost a piece, but as the move d5, so is gaining a piece back. The best move is bishop on d3, and after the take, we take with the bishop. We have the same pawn, but after they play bishop d6, we castle and they castle. As you can see, they have this ground pawn in the center that doesn't allow us to play d4, so white is going to have less space. If we actually play d4 now, they can take, and after we take with the knight, knight take, and we cannot take back because there is this static, and obviously we are going to lose the queen. So keep in mind that if you play knight on c3, you are going to have an hard time, so there are better options. We can play d3, which again is the most played move, and we're basically trying to go into the gioco pianissimo again, so if you like that opening, you are fine. If they play bishop on c5, we play c3 and we're disposed into the gioco pianissimo. But if they don't do that, they might play bishop e7, which actually is the most played move in this line. They play knight on f6 in order to avoid the gioco pianissimo. And at this point we could play short castle, rook on e1, d6, a4. In order to prevent this move, because after they play knight on a5, we have the move bishop on e7, they can play c5, c3, they maneuver the knight, knight on a3, and as you can see again, it's still a positional opening. The difference is that they don't have the bishop on c5, and there is a different status for this reason with different game plans, but it's still going to be positional, and that's the positional approach. But what happens if we want to be more aggressive? Well, for example, in this position, we could play quite an aggressive move, which is the move d4. And d4 is not the Greco gambit, it's similar, but they still don't have the bishop on c5, and we still don't have played the move c3. So after they take, we still have the idea of playing e5, but that's actually the Scotch gambit. After they play d5, we still move the bishop on b5, pinning the knight, bishop on d7, knight on e4 because it was under attack, and we can take the pawn, putting pressure on the pin knight. They play bishop on d7, and now if we want to pose problem for black, we had to take with the bishop. They are going to damage this clutter, and now we can play short castle, bishop on c5, f3, gaining a tempo on the knight, and playing f4. The knight goes back, we play bishop on e3, bishop on d6, knight on d2, take, c5, knight on f3, d4, bishop on f2, and bishop on c6. Now, as you can see, we have a really strong center. Black still has to castle, but I would say that in this position, black stand better. I mean, white, according to Stockfish, is slightly better, but in my opinion, it's quite hard to play as white. These two bishops are monsters. After we move the dark square bishop, and by the way, bishop on h4 is the best move, there might be discoveries on the king. So it's going to be pretty complicated. If you want to play the Scotch Gambit, you need to be really prepared with theory because it's quite complicated. Instead of doing that, there is another aggressive approach which is absolutely crazy. Probably the craziest move of all of them, which is the move knight on g5, the move that I usually play. And by the way, that's not the Frey lever. A lot of people think this is the Frey lever. We can reach the Frey lever from this position, but that's the knight attack. As simple as that. We play the move g5, which is the point of having played bishop on c4, putting pressure on this pawn. Now we can play the move knight on g5 now, because black still cannot castle, and black, since played the move knight on f6, can't play the move knight on h6. Going back, if for example they play these and we play knight on g5, well, first of all, we can't do that. So let's say we play d3. If they develop the knight and we play knight on g5, they can castle, but let's say they play this and we play knight on g5, they have the move knight on h6, defending the pawn. That's the difference. But after the move knight on f6, they cannot do that, so we can play the move knight on g5. Now, this allows the move bishop on c5, the Tassler counter-attack. And I already made 2 videos about this. They are really in-depth. 2 videos about 30 minutes. And if you are interested on beating the Tassler counter-attack, there is the link of these videos in the description. But this is not the best move, and if white knows his theory and decide to take with the bishop, and is going to be considerably better. So instead of doing that, they can play the move d5, which is pretty much the only move. And after we take, if they take with the knight, that's the Frey lever. And that's pretty bad opening for black. It's only played pretty much at beginner level, so I don't think I'm going to make a video about this. But just so you know, in this position you have to take with the king, and after that we can give a check with the queen, attacking the knight 2 times while giving a check. So the only move that holds is actually king on e6, and as you can see is pretty much horrible. We play knight on c6, attacking the knight another time, knight on b4, defending it, and after that we can castle, c6, defending the knight, and d4, queen on f6, queen on d1. You cannot really take because otherwise you get absolutely destroyed. You have to play a move such king on e7, after that rook on e1, and as you can see white is down a piece, but has a lot of pressure, is better, and if black plays perfectly he might hold, but trust me, is pretty much impossible to hold. This position is too complicated. White has an incredibly strong attack. So the best move is knight on a5. Knight on a5, bishop check, the block with the pawn, we take, pawn take, in order to make us waste the time. And now we can play the move bishop on d3 and bishop on e2. Now, I always played bishop on d3, but I figured out some days ago that probably the move bishop on e2 is better. That's the most played move, but I believe that bishop on e2 is better if you know your theory though, because it is a pretty complicated line, and these lines in general are pretty crazy. And the best move is playing knight on d5, knight on f3, bishop on d6, short castle, knight on f4, rook on e1. If we move the bishop, we get destroyed because they have the idea of f5, for example. So knight takes there, pawn take, short castle, knight on c3, rook on e8, knight on e4, and yes, we are up a pawn, but we have double pawns. This bishop is not so easy to develop. The plan is playing b3 and bishop on b2. This knight is pretty strong, but is zeros if black knows his theory. And with bishop on e2 instead, which is a line that I'm going to show you in the next videos, there are just some crazy lines that you don't really understand. So going back in general, that's pretty much it about the move knight on f6. So let's see the sidelines. What happens if they play bishop on e7, the Hungarian defense? Now, if they play the Hungarian defense, we have the slow move and again the aggressive move. Let's start with the slow move, which is short castle, knight on f6, d3, short castle, and guess what? That's the line I showed you before. If you play knight on f6, and we play d3 and you play bishop on e7, and we are going to have a positional game, which is different though, with this dictator in the future and the bishop on e7. But instead of doing that, if you want to play with the aggressive move, we can play d4. Now, if you take the pawn, we have some crazy lines with c3 that I'm going to show you in the next videos. But let's say if we take with the knight, which is the most played move, they can play d6. And after we castle short, they play the move knight on f6 and knight on c3. Witness pose into a position that you're going to see even after the move d6. I'm going to talk about this position in a few minutes, but instead of doing that, let's say I play this and you don't want to take, you play d6, which is the most played move. The best move is actually to take the pawn, and after the take we want to take queens, develop pieces, and they play e6 for example, we can castle long. So white is claiming that is better because our pieces are more active, we already castle, our opponent still has to develop the bishop, so yeah. White is better, is not like considerably better, also the dictator is symmetrical, so there are chances to draw, and that's considered the best way to fight against the Hungarian defense, basically giving problems for black through all the queenless middle game, and maybe even in the endgame. If someone is playing for the win, it's certainly white. The last line I wanted to show you was the d6 line. Now, what you can play now is c3 or d4. You might think d4 is more aggressive, which is probably true, but I have to say that this time if you play c3, you're not going to play positional stuff. I mean, you could, but there are lines that are also pretty aggressive for black. So let's say I play c3, which is the most played line. The most played move is actually g6, and I'll show you what happens. At this point you play d4, queen on e7, short castle, bishop on g7, you take, knight take, pawn take, b3, and basically what you want to do in this position after they play bishop on e6, bishop on e3, queen d7 is taking the bishop, and after queen take you have the move c4, and you're basically saying I have a control of this square is a good outpost for my knight. My plan might be to play knight on c3, knight on d5, and I'm going to play a positional game and try to slowly gain an edge on you, because you cannot castle long, but you cannot also castle short because I have the bishop on a3. So g6 is the most played move, but black, for example, could also play f5. So if you play c3, you have to be ready for some crazy lines. What happens if you play d4 instead? Well, after you play d4, they basically have to take, or otherwise they could play bishop on e7, transposing into an Hungarian defense, or they could play the move bishop on g4, but after bishop on g4 and c3, white is considerably better because we have ground center, the idea of playing d5, maybe also the idea of playing queen on b3, and we could also play h3, g4, and try to put a lot of pressure on this bishop. So instead of doing that, let's say they just take the pawn, which is the by far most played line, we can take, and after that they're going to play knight on f6, knight on c3, bishop on e7, and as you see, that's the line of the Hungarian defense that I was talking about before. After we castle, they castle, we have rook on e1, rook on e8, and now there are a few ideas. Usually they play the move hd, but there is also a pretty interesting move in this position, which is bishop on f4, just putting pressure on this pawn, with some ideas in the future maybe to take the knight and then play the move e5. The most played move is bishop on f8, and after that we could play bishop on g5, but again there is this move, knight takes on c6, and after pawn take we had the move e5, and that's already pretty complicated to play for black, so I would say that's an interesting line. You need to know that the best move in this position is bishop g4, because otherwise you are in trouble. Let's say you actually take the pawn, we have the move rook take, and if we take queens we get into an endgame with a much better structure, so if someone has to win, it's going to be white. So as you can see, the Italian game is plenty of variation that can be played by positional or by tactical players. It is a pretty interesting opening, but if you want to be good at this, obviously you need to know your theory. But don't worry, because in this day I'm going to make new videos about the Italian game. So that's it for today guys, and see you with the next video.